a center of excellence, a nurturing space for innovation, creativity, and academic freedom. This is the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. As a constituent university of the University of the Philippines system, UPLB is a leading national higher education and research institution in various niche areas. Grounding itself on the needs of national development, UPLB cultivates well-rounded and critical leaders who are ready to lead breakthroughs and innovations. Through its industrial and academic partnerships, UPLB propagates its gains to advance inclusive development in various sectors. An educational institution that upholds honor, excellence, and public service.
A center of knowledge, innovation, history, culture, and biodiversity. This is the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. UPLB found its home at the foot of the legendary Mount Makiling in Los Baños, Laguna, a short distance from Laguna de Bay, the country's largest lake. It has its beginnings in 1909 as the UP College of Agriculture, a tent school for a handful of students. A year after, the Forest School, or what was to become the College of Forestry, also set up its home in Los Baños. In 1972, the UP College of Agriculture and the College of Forestry, that had by then become renowned institutions, were granted full autonomy as the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Instruction, research, and extension in agriculture and forestry in the country took root and flourished in UPLB. Through its strength in these two fields, UPLB established niches in various areas: biotechnology, engineering, veterinary medicine, natural resources conservation, environmental science and management, human ecology, food science, economics and management, public affairs, and development communication. It drew its strength in the arts and other fields of science, from harnessing its expertise in human resource in the biological, physical, and social sciences. Today, UPLB degree programs continue to dominate over its counterparts. Over the years, UPLB has developed graduate programs that continue to attract students far and wide, including collaborative programs with international universities in food security, biodiversity conservation, and development. To make graduate programs more accessible to professionals, UPLB offers them off-campus. Recently, UPLB established the UP Professional School for Agriculture and the Environment in Mindanao, the country's food basket, in order to help build the knowledge capital that the country needs to attain food security. Instruction in UPLB is enhanced by a strong and vigorous engagement in research and public service that enables it to produce knowledge and generate technologies and innovations that promote sustainable living, making it a strong force in the war against hunger and poverty in the country. Extension and public service are the mechanisms by which UPLB brings this knowledge and technologies to the people, as well as for it to know what they need and to help shape policies in the country. UPLB's reputation as a graduate and research university was formed through the continuous aspiration for excellence and the mutual reinforcement between instruction, research, and public service and extension. It brings in partnerships with local and international universities and provides mobility to faculty members, researchers and scientists, and students, and enhances their competitiveness. Instruction, research, and extension and public service in UPLB reflect the dynamism, honor, and excellence that its forebears set as a standard for its leaders to aspire for. This and an enabling environment for creativity and innovation among its people make UPLB a globally competitive research and graduate university that contributes to national development.
The world is in a constant state of change now more than ever. It's a world that requires resilience, flexibility, and innovation to overcome challenges and to pursue growth. That is why the University of the Philippines Los Baños is pursuing future-proofing initiatives to provide agile leadership and develop local and global communities amidst shocks and disruptions in an ever-changing world. Guided by compassion, an openness to working together, and a daring to seek out breakthroughs, UPLB constantly pushes for academic excellence, produces relevant research, establishes academic and industry partnerships, and cultivates creativity, critical thinking, and innovation. To keep up with the fast-changing world and to strive for inclusivity in development, UPLB seeks to level the playing field and expand avenues for acquiring new knowledge. It is reshaping the learning experience, enabling students and educators to continue with the learning process in vastly different learning conditions. It is expanding its academic programs and supporting initiatives to create a conducive learning environment. To address the growing complexities of modern problems, UPLB continues to break barriers across disciplines to produce cutting-edge innovations and solutions that serve the needs of various communities. It is taking on challenges in food security and sustainability and coordinating research efforts to direct the university's resources toward critical research areas, making sure that the university-generated knowledge can reach its intended stakeholders and be applied to real-life contexts. UPLB is dedicated to its commitment to contribute to public good and social welfare as it continues to work with the local government and the community to address their most pressing needs. Amidst its engagements, UPLB remains as one of the top regional and global universities and continues to be recognized in the country and across the world. As the national university, UPLB aims to be a steadfast partner in development, as a producer of new approaches that minimize the cost and impacts of future shocks, and by honing leaders committed to knowledge creation, innovation and cutting-edge research, and public service. This is UPLB's roadmap to be an impactful institution in a constantly changing landscape. Responsive, innovative, future-proof.
For over 100 years now, UPLB has nurtured a research culture that enriches instruction and enhances creativity and innovation in its faculty. This has made the university a wellspring of solutions to challenges in food security, ecological integrity, public health, and the environment. The complexity of these challenges took the university's research focus from boosting production into sustainability, the interconnectedness of man and his environment, and equitable development. Through the confluence of strengths in its niches, UPLB became a research hub in sustainable agriculture and forestry, climate change, public health, natural resources and biodiversity conservation, energy development, food and nutrition security, and disaster risk reduction. With its research partners, the university continuously contributes to knowledge and technological development in these various areas. As UPLB moves forward, more of these partnerships will take shape for the attainment of inclusive development. Aside from enriching instruction, its research tradition is aimed at making the university relevant to the life of our people through public service and extension work. This ensures the appropriateness of technologies and knowledge products and enables it to contribute to policy making and governance. Research, instruction, and public service. Each one enables the others to make the university a dynamic powerhouse that contributes to the attainment of inclusive growth and national development.
The UPLB Agora is our unified research and extension agenda, where we envisioned UPLB as an agora or a marketplace of pioneering and demand-driven research and extension for development and innovation through systems thinking, solutions making, and future-proof paradigms. This agenda is a product of a series of consultations from stakeholders in the university. UPLB Agora will draw from our strength as the national university as we contribute to national transformation. It shall direct the path of research and extension as we address pressing challenges in food security, health, natural disasters, and governance. We have always been at the forefront of changing lives and helping people be a better version of themselves. And we will continue to do so under the UPLB Agora.
At the center of UPLB Agora lies our research and extension priorities captured by 4 focus areas. UPLB shall ensure people's access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that is produced and traded through sustainable, just, and collaboratively defined agricultural systems. Anchored on the pillars of disease prevention and mitigation, environmental hazard protection and conservation, and resilience of ecosystems, UPLB will continue to seek to improve the physical, emotional, social, and mental wellness of the community. Anchored on the pillars of human capital, environmental, social, and economic principles, this focus area seeks to lead in and facilitate the enhancement of stakeholder capacities. Anchored on the pillars of government leadership, policy and regulation, technology and innovation, economic development, and communitarian spirit, this focus area guides UPLB in promoting a culturally vibrant, safe, and economically thriving society. It will also guide us as we seek to enhance organizational capacities and promote good governance principles and practices. We shall be guided by the principles of compassion, collaboration, science-based recommendations, active engagement, and inclusivity. Through our agenda, we want to contribute more vigorously to addressing the pressing and pervasive problems in the economy, environment, and society. We will operationalize the UPLB Agora through PROACT, which stands for Participatory Response to Opportunities for Action along the 4 focus areas on food security and sovereignty, One Health, resilience and sustainability, and future communities and institutions. Defined by efficient systems and processes and inclusive development and innovation, our ultimate goal is a future-proof university, a future-proof Philippines, and a future-proof world.
And we shall do this with you.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. Good day, Mites. Good day, Emmer. So good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Marie Amparo. I'm the Dean of the College of Human Ecology, and welcome to the STE Talks. So, it's a social technology talks that we usually conduct in our regular classes and also other partners, together with partners of the Department of Social Development Services. College of Human Ecology, UP Los Baños. So today we are joined by mostly students of the SDS 168 Social Impact Risk Assessment. So kaway-kaway naman dyan, those in the room right now who's face-to-face and others who are joining us online as well. So we're doing this hybrid and welcome to this afternoon's seminar. So let's start the ball rolling, no? So I don't want to eat a lot of time introducing our speaker for today, but we're very fortunate that we usually invite esteemed and distinguished speakers to share with us their experience, particularly in the field of social impact assessment. And we're very fortunate this afternoon to be joined not only by a really esteemed professional, but also a dear friend of mine. So let me quickly introduce to you our speaker for today. We'll talk about social risk indicators, particularly in major infrastructures. Um, Emerson, Dr. Emerson M. Sanchez. A round of applause, please. So Emerson is ARC Research Fellow at the Institute for Infrastructure and Society in ANU Crawford School for Public Policy. He researches social risks, environmental and natural resource politics and movements. He completed his PhD at the Center for Deliberative Democracy and Global Governance, University of Canberra, where he studied environmental discourses surrounding Philippine mining disasters. He obtained an MA in International Public Policy at the University of Tsukuba and a BA in Journalism cum laude at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He published works on Philippine mining disasters, social movements under former President Rodrigo Duterte, and sovereign wealth funds for Philippine offshore energy resources. Right now, Dr. Emerson is also part of our project in terms of co-producing or developing indicators, particularly for renewable energy projects here in the Philippines. So we're very excited about that. So without much further ado, let's hear it up. Here, Dr. Emer Sanchez. A round of applause, please. Dr. Emer, the floor is yours.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone, and maraming salamat, Dean Jen, for that generous introduction. Siguro, i-confirm ko lang yung make-up nung class, no? So, half, I think, are on campus and half are online. Tama ba?
Yes, Dr. Emer.
Okay. Sige. Salamat. So I just have a few interactive slides. And I inassume ko kasi na everyone is online. So I just like to ask, is there anyone na nasa classroom who is also logged in the Zoom session? Meron ba?
I think, yes. Kailangan nila mag-ano doon, no, Emer? Sige.
Hindi naman ganun ka-crucial, pero para lang if there's any answer or contribution from the in-person cohort na at least there's one person who could type in for the group, if that's okay. Pero hindi naman crucial, like if they can't participate, that's fine. Relax tayo. I know it's a Friday afternoon, so let's keep it light. End of the week. Pero let's, let's try to learn, but also let's try to keep it light at the same time. So yun lang yung request ko. All right. Thank you.
You could assign someone from the group. Nishi, are you there in the classroom? Ayan.
Ayun
Thank you,
yung CHEDO.
Yes.
Ayan.
Okay.
Sige. Hello.
Please
Kumusta?
Thank you.
All right. All right. Very enthusiastic ang mga estudyante mo din. All right. So before I begin, I wish to acknowledge the Nganawal and Ngambri people as traditional custodians of the land where I am making this presentation, and also the other people or families with connection to the lands of the Australian Capital Territory and the surrounding region. So as Dean Jen mentioned a while ago, I'm with the Institute for Infrastructure and Society. I'm a research fellow with I2S, as we call it. So we are based at the Australian National University at the Crawford School of Public Policy. So that's my disciplinary home, gay public policy scholar ako pretty much. So first of all, I'm thankful for this invitation from the SDS 168 subject on social impact assessment at UPLB CHE, DSDS, haba nun. Okay, so I'm delighted to be here to share part of our research program on social risk in major infrastructure in Australia. And before I continue, i-share ko pala yung aking screen. So, I didn't use PowerPoint. Okay ba? Can you all see it? Nakaano lang ako, PDF.
Yes, Emmer, we could
Okay,
see it.
okay naman. Sige. Kasi I just want it to be more stable kumpara sa PowerPoint. And I think mas magaan siya sa file, sa internet, I think. All right. So, tapos pala, I'll minimize my Zoom screen, Dean Jen. If ever there's like a question in person or also sa chat, if someone, I think Jasper is monitoring the chat, perhaps.
Yes, yes, Dr.
Ayan,
M.
Jasper, feel free to just interrupt me at any point. Ano tayo, casual tayo dito. Pag merong question or if there's a comment sa chat na relevant sa discussion, feel free to interrupt me kasi hindi ko nakikita yung chat. And then also, dun sa naka-online, yung sa CHEDO, sorry, I'll just mention the name, yung Melvin Dakanay, paki-ano lang din, feel free to interrupt me. Ano tayo, very informal tayo this afternoon. All right, thank you. Okay, sige. So my presentation is on developing a research social risk framework for major infrastructure projects, specifically in Australia. So I like to. This may not seem to be so important to the research itself, but yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge the different non-university partners of the Institute who, kasi they generously support us with both their knowledge and also with their resources for us to undertake our research project. So this presentation is just a sample of our broader research program. So we have the social risk research program, which I will talk about today. And then we also have the Industry Engagement Excellence Standards Research Program. So that one is more focused on community engagement in major infrastructure projects. I'm no longer part of that. So my other colleagues are actually the ones involved in that research program. Teka lang, I'm just looking at some major. Nawawala yung ano ko, yung PDF. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, and then we also have the surveys research program. So the surveys, there are two major components of that. So we have the surveys with industry professionals, and then we also have surveys with communities affected by major infrastructure projects. Yeah, and then we also have a knowledge translation research program. Yeah, so pretty much all of those research program, the way we look at it is that at I2S, my institute, so our focus is simple. So we work with industry and communities, and our goal is to produce leading research and also advice, plus evidence-based tools. Okay, so we don't really finish with. We don't end at research and also making like policy recommendations. We also create the tools to help industry and also communities deal with major infrastructure projects. So we're hoping that the tools that we produce help in improving decision making around infrastructure project delivery and also coming up with better outcomes for infrastructure projects in society. So just to give you an idea of what it takes to roll out a research program. So I'll be sharing with you the members of the social risk research program. So our director is the lead convener of the research program, Professor Sarah Bice. And then we work closely with industry. And because of that, our institute is a little bit unique. So we have an industry director. So Miss Kirsty O'Connell. So Kirsty has, if I'm not mistaken, maybe almost 20 years of experience with community engagement as a practitioner. And then we have Dr. Haley Henderson. Her specialization is urban planning. And then we have two research officers. They're our research assistants. So Mr. Sabit Otor, he is our quantitative guy. He's highly trained economist. So pag quantitative methods, or if we need, some modeling to come up with some quantitative output. So Sabit is our go-to person for that. And then we also have another Filipino in the team, Miss Shanice Espiritu Amador. So she's a public policy graduate of our school. Um, so she specializes in qualitative methods. So later on, you would see that some of our methods involved, literature review, policy analysis. So a lot of the reports that we have on those research areas, Shanice actually, either she led some of them or she's highly involved in some of those reports. And then also there's a QR code. And if you want to access so our website is called nextgenerationengagement.org, if I'm not mistaken. And then the QR code there actually, it would show you, I think, a list of links. But actually, the list is just one at the moment, which is the publication. So if you click that link, after you get directed by that with the QR code, you'll be led directly to the list of publications of our website. So yeah, so pasensya na, konting advertisement. Pero ayan, I just want you to have an idea of what it takes, how big a team it takes sometimes, to come up with seemingly simple research processes and outputs that, I will discuss in a little bit. So yeah, so the project itself, it's called Managing and Mitigating Social Risks of Major Infrastructure Projects. So this one was funded in 2022 by the Australian Research Council linkage program. So as I told you a while ago, and I showed you, I think it was the second slide where I showed you the logos of our different partners. So for this particular project, so our specific partners are Lend-Lease, Transurban, Oricon. So these are major companies involved in different kinds, related to construction. And then we also have government agencies. So the State of Victoria, DTMR, I think it's the Department of Transport, something and Roads. Yeah, maybe. Hindi ko alam kung ano yung M. I can't remember now. And then we also have the MTIA, which is specific for Melbourne. It is the Metropolitan Transport Infrastructure Authority, which no longer exists. And I can't remember the new name. So they've been reorganized. Yeah. So, and then also we have the Engagement People, which is a consulting agency, consulting group, focused on community engagement. So I guess I'm mentioning this just for you to see how ang kulang lang dyan, maybe in a way a little bit, is actual communities, but the engagement people is sort of covered by that because that's really their work. So the duration of that project is from 3 years from 2022 to 2025. So at this point, we're kind of a little bit over halfway with the projects, and some of the discussion I'll have today has to do with the partial findings from what we did so far. So the ARC, the one funding this, is maybe a bit comparable to maybe the National Research Council, which I think is based with the DOST. For social science, I don't know if there is a counterpart in the Philippines, but I know for humanities research, sometimes we get funding from the NCCA, and also for social sciences, maybe the PSSC, the Philippine Social Science Council. And then again, just on another note on the partner, so this is a multi-sectoral collaboration. So we don't think of ourselves as researchers that we are siloed or separate from industry, from communities, from government. So we from the very beginning, we acknowledge that for this project to be very relevant, that we really need to work with with partners from different sectors of society. Okay. So what are the major output or outcomes that we promised the ARC for this project? So one is we wanted to do a systematic definition of social risk. I'm not sure if systematic is the correct word. Maybe a comprehensive definition of social risk. Because what we found when we were researching this is there are bits and pieces of description of what social risk is, but none of them would be what we would consider as comprehensive. So that's the first thing. And then in the process of that definition, we would identify the different components that make up social risk. And from there on, we're hoping to come up with a framework which would be in the form of, in terms of, I guess, applied outputs, they would be what we would consider tools. So we think of them in two ways, or we distinguish two types of tools for the second major output. So there's one which is, I guess, more focused on identifying social risk. And then the second one is on management and also mitigation of social risk. Then there's the third one, which, to be honest, our quant guy is the one really leading this, so I don't really have much to talk about. This is on coming up with like a pricing model of social risk. We're in the very early stages because this is the last model, I think, that we're going to be developing. So until this time, there's still a lot of I guess discussion among the different team members about how we're gonna go about it. Personally, yeah, I don't have much input in this one. Yeah, because parang you need a lot of quantitative skills, I think, to think through this particular output. Now, I highlighted identification because a lot of the discussion today would be on the identification tool for social risk management. Okay, so now let's go to the meat of the discussion. So I know that this is a social impact assessment course, and I just want to, I guess, demonstrate somehow that, obviously social risk is also connected to social impact assessment, and that's why, I'm discussing this today. So yeah, so I just have two questions in this regard. So maybe let's start with social risk. So I just want to see, maybe in the chat and also from those in the classroom, if you could just give me certain words which you associate with social risk. So mag-word association tayo. I was thinking of using the online program, pero I think it's still gonna be complicated. So mag-chat na lang tayo. Yeah, sorry for putting the ones. Yan, yung mga nasa chat, nasa online natin. Yeah, I'll be relying on you. Yeah, wala namang right or wrong answer dito. I'm just looking at, when you talk about, when you say the term social risk, what comes to your mind? Okay, meron ba? Pakitype lang sa, okay. So human well-being, all right? So I think it's a holistic view. Okay, yeah. So harm, yep. So I guess when we talk about major infrastructure development, yes, especially, we talk about vulnerability. Yeah, yung degree, I think we talk about scale, or maybe intensity. Okay, all right. So now, if we talk about social impact, ano naman yung words na maiisip nyo that you could associate with social impact? Okay, long term. Okay. Pwede rin umulit if you think the related word is related to social risk but also related to social impact, that's also fine. Meron pa ba? Social impact? Yeah, I also forgot to ask, Dean Jen, pang ilang session na nila to sa klase?
In terms of social assessment,
Yung klase.
naka 1 month na kami, Doc Emer.
Okay, okay. Sige. So,
We're
ano na
actually
kayo?
in the
Marami na silang alam.
dapat.
Marami na silang alam. Sige. So, hindi naman. All right. So, maybe, so the question here is, I just want to demonstrate that yung social inequalities, yung human well-being, yung harm, yung vulnerability, or even yung, I guess, scale of risk, are also words that arguably you could also apply to social impact. Kasi hindi naman sila nagkakalayo na term. I mean, meron silang relationship. And maybe at this point, we might as well go to definitions. Yeah, so I have two definitions here. So the first one is it refers to the process of analyzing, monitoring, and managing the social aspects and consequences of development. And then the second one, it refers to an event, characteristic, condition, behavior, phenomenon, or activity that increases the probability and severity of an adverse effect upon something of value, social value. And siguro, based din dun sa mga references, baka may clue na kayo kung which one among this is social risk and which one is social impact. So doon tayo sa number 1. Pwede ba akong kumuha ng mga guesses, mga hula? Does this refer to social risk or to social impact? Yung number 1. Lagay na lang natin sa chat. Number 1, the process of analyzing, monitoring, and managing the social aspects and consequences of development. Okay. Ito ba ay social risk or sa tingin nyo ay social impact? Social risk. Social impact, social risk. Okay, sige. How about yung number 2? Okay, so number 2 naman tayo. So number 2, it refers to an event, a characteristic, condition, behavior, phenomenon, or activity that increases the probability and severity of an adverse effect upon something of value. Is this social risk or social impact? Number 2. Okay. Okay, so tama naman. Okay, so many of you refer to social impact for the naka-pause yata yung ano ko. Pwede ba akong humingi ng tulong, Jasper? Naka-pause ba yung ano ko, presentation? It says here my screen sharing is paused. Did I do that? Dean, nakikita mo pa ba yung ano ko, presentation?
Sir, ano lang po. Unsure din.
Okay. Pero nakikita nyo?
Apo, nakikita.
Okay, okay. Okay, alright. Okay, sige, sige. So, okay pa tayo. Alright. So, yes, you're correct about that. Okay, most of you. I think all the responses I saw. Okay, so number 1, in-identify nila social impact. And number 2, in-identify nila as social risk. I'm not sure kung may iba na medyo na pagbaliktad nila. And if so, that's also fine. Okay, kasi to be honest, we've done an extensive literature review about this, and different scholars define them differently. So sometimes it's really difficult to distinguish the difference between social impact and social risk. However, having said that, our team, we've set the boundary of the difference somewhere. So itong definitions sa screen, these are actually from our own reports, the ones that the definitions we've settled in. So the first one, yes. So this is social risk, social impact, and second one is social risk. Now I'll move on to the next slide where I would show what I think, okay, are the different, I guess, in different focus, okay, of each definition. So for social impact, so it's focused on social aspects and consequences of different kinds of development. For social risk, it's about the increase in the probability and severity of an adverse effect. Pero kung mapapansin nyo, yung yellow highlights for both definitions that I made here, yung social aspects and consequences, I think, from my own perspective, I think it's also very much similar to adverse effect upon something of social value. So for me, that's the intersection. So um, while it's helpful to distinguish them from each other, even from an application perspective, like if you want to have a tool for social risk assessment or a tool for social impact assessment, my argument is it's important to set boundaries and to be clear about what you mean by impact and risk in that context. However, also it's important, I think, to acknowledge that they're quite related, and to understand, like if you become SIA practitioners in the future, for you to understand how they are related and how that would, I guess, inform your practice as an SIA practitioners, to have that, I guess, holistic view on how risk and impact are actually related to each other and how they would play out in different, I guess, development projects. So for me, that's where I see. So there's a consideration of both consequences for both definitions. The only difference, I think, is for risk, you're also looking at probability and severity. Or maybe more, yeah. So yun. And then let's go back to the project that I mentioned a while ago on the ARC project. So this one, the rationale for this project pretty much is that based on so there was a pilot study before we applied for the research grant, which funded the 3-year project. So the first thing we saw from the pilot study is that there's inconsistent understanding of social risk. So that's what I mentioned a while ago. Different scholars can define it differently. They also, I guess, focus on different aspects of social risk when they define it. That's why our first, I guess, research outcome that we want to do for this project is to come up with a comprehensive and systematic definition of social risk. And in terms of so one of the things that was shared to us by different practitioners, whether they're from the community engagement sector or from the social impact assessment sector, is that there is no systematic approach in which to manage and mitigate social risk in major infrastructure projects. So one of the things we usually get from our surveys is that they use gut feel, okay, to come up to address social risks. They learn from the advice of colleagues. So yung mga seniors, for example, if these are junior professionals, that's how they learn how to address social risks in major infrastructure project. Yeah, so those are like two of the most common. So in other words, there's no systematic, I guess, framework that they could use in order to address social risks in major infrastructure. So that's pretty much the rationale of proposing this project. And then just a reminder, so I'll just go back again to the major output. Okay, so just a reminder that so we have 3 major output for this project, but for this presentation, I'll be focusing on the identification tool, okay, of this project. So just to demonstrate, so because when we did the pilot study, so there was that realization that there's not a lot of research done on social risk. Yun nga eh, so definition pa lang parang nagkakatalo na. Okay, so we had a very careful start about this. So we used multiple methods to have that confidence in our findings and analysis that we got this from multiple sources, from different from multiple sources and from multiple methods, so that we could so we had those ways of validating our findings and our analysis. So the first one is for the pilot study in 2021, our industry director conducted key informant interviews with industry professionals. Hindi naman ito marami. think this is about, if I'm not mistaken, these are 11 individuals. But the key here is she got interviews with I guess the right people. I mean, most of them are senior professionals in the industry, and so the interviews were well. I wasn't part of the researchers who analyzed the interview transcripts, but according to them, they were very insightful, and they really formed, I guess, a solid backbone for writing the research proposal for this project. And then we had an extensive literature review. So pretty much a lot of the research that was reviewed for this one, the scholarly work, were on risk management, social protection, social benefit, and also social value were some of the areas that formed part of the literature review. And then the other part of that is actually policy analysis. So there were a lot of domestic and international, but sorry, when I say domestic, Australian government documents that were used. So our industry director, based on her years of experience as a community engagement and social impact assessor, she led us to the departments and also the different documents and guidelines in those departments, yung mga Department of Planning, Department of Environment, Department of Infrastructure, and also Finance, Treasury. So that's the other area that that was revealing to me when I started this project, that the Treasury or Finance, they actually, because they have a lot of stake, because a lot of the major infrastructure projects in Australia are funded by government, by the Treasury. So the Treasury themselves, they have a lot of guidelines. Yeah, and then so we were looking at these different guidelines and what they could or could not tell us about social considerations in major infrastructure projects. So I guess if I were to sum up the government documents, there's actually very little policy, social, I mean, sa pangkalahatan, okay, if we look at them, yeah, most of these documents, in general, there's little social consideration. A lot of it has to do with, very economic perspectives, cost-benefit analysis, project completion. So those are the I guess the focus that they have. Except, for example, in certain states like New South Wales, the state of New South Wales, they have actually SIA guidelines. So that's quite helpful. Other states, for example, Victoria, where Melbourne is, wala silang social impact assessment guidelines. You could find social considerations, for example, from their environmental policies, from their project planning document guidelines. So hahanapin mo talaga. And this is part of the rationale for the project. Okay, so there are certain jurisdictions, actually there are a lot of jurisdictions, I'd say, I would claim, in Australia, where they don't have a comprehensive document for social impact assessment, for example. So wala kang one-stop shop document. So if you were a professional, you would have to rely on, I guess, your own competence and also on your own perspective, di ba? Kasi if you have a community perspective when you get into this, then naturally you would have I guess a sensitivity to community impacts, for example, of major infrastructure projects. Now, unfortunately, kung wala ka nun, then because it's not in the documents, so it's easy to miss those kinds of considerations. And so we think because of that, if we have these kinds of social risk management tools that you're able to give industry professionals I guess a comprehensive guidance on how to actually identify and manage these social risks. And then the third method we did was we did an analysis of risk registers. Dean, familiar ba sa class? Nadidiscuss ba sa class yung risk registers? or from anyone from the class? Na-discuss ba yung risk registers o hindi? Could I see sa comments? Yes or no lang? Meron ba? Nadidinig niyo ba ako? Nandiyan pa kayo? Okay, hindi. Okay, nakita ko na. All right. Yeah, so risk registers, so these are usually in Excel form, MS Excel form, and then you normally they have a list of potential like harmful potential harms, okay, from the project, and then also there's also a listing of possible consequences for that. Some of them would have very few would have actual quantitative costs, like in Australian dollars. But in general, especially if it's social, yeah, there wouldn't be any cost about it. Yeah, so we looked at those. It was actually difficult to get because I think there are legal limitations for making risk registers public. So yeah, it was one of the challenging parts of our data gathering on how to get hold of risk registers. But luckily I think in the end we got 7. Some of them quite comprehensive and very insightful on the kind of risks identified by companies. And then um, others naman, because they had to de-identify them because nga of the legal issue. So sometimes, yeah, very minimal yung content or information in the risk registers. Let's see. And then the other ones, yeah. So I mentioned a while ago, we have a surveys program, and then some of the questions in these surveys for either industry or for communities have to do with social risks. So some of the findings from the surveys actually they form part of our research reports. And then we also have industry working group validation workshops. So yung surveys research program namin, we have a working group, industry working group for that. For the social risk, we have another one. And then also for the industry engagement excellence standards, we have another working group. So the working group are composed mostly of government representatives and also industry representatives. So we usually have them three times a year. And we take those opportunities to update them about the research and the findings. But more than just updating, we actually ask them. We actually hold workshops during these working group meetings in order to, in a way, get feedback about our findings and about our plans, especially yung part about coming up with tools that they could apply. Sometimes we go to them to sort of pilot test some of the tools that we want to roll out or to be part of the outcomes of the research. Yeah, and then the last method that we have for the social risk project is what we call the Delphi technique. I know most of you are in your 3rd year, so I don't know if you're already taking your research methods class for your thesis. So I don't know kung na-discuss yung Delphi technique, but it's pretty much it's a bit different from the usual, for example, yung mga Pulse Asia na, they have this mga political surveys, which is a representative sample of a cross-section of Philippine society. So the Delphi technique is different. So it's focused on experts. So very purposive yung selection. So this is still ongoing. So we have the Delphi technique in order to come up with a master list of social risk factors. And then we wanted to check the likelihood and severity of likelihood and severity of these factors. So we had 2 rounds for that. So the range of the respondents is from 28 up to 37. So medyo maliit siya. Pero piling-pili, and they're well targeted. So we wanted experts from government who are involved in policy making or decision making. And then we also had representatives from industry, so environmental managers, community engagement professionals, project leaders. And then we also had representatives from highly affected communities from major infrastructure projects. So medyo binabalanse namin yung breakdown nung we were aiming na, we get more or less equal number of so we have 3 sectors that we wanted to be represented. So government, industry, and communities. Which actually is an innovation for the Delphi technique, because normally the Delphi technique is when they say expert, their notion of expert is usually like a technical person or a professional or maybe an academic. But for this one, we changed the definition of expert to also include community knowledge in terms of expertise. So all of this, we use all of the insights from these different research projects to inform the findings and analysis of the project. All right, so as I said a while ago, so we're focusing on the social risk identification framework. So if the definition below, okay, is of social risk is that it refers to an event, characteristic, condition, behavior, phenomenon, or activity that increases the probability and severity of an adverse effect upon something of social value. Okay, so that's the definition. So if we would break that down, there would be three important aspects, or I call them aspects. We don't really have a term for it. I'll just call it aspects of the social risk identification framework. So we think there is what we call precursors or drivers. So I think in the risk register, one of the terms I think which they use, which we also understand in the same way as precursors drivers, is actually causes. And then we also have social risk factors. So the social risk factors is the one increasing the probability and severity. And then we have the adverse effect, which I think most people would also call consequences. So far with our research, we've identified 35 social risk factors from using the different data sources, but primarily from the Delphi technique. So same with the consequences. That's actually still ongoing. So we actually identified 31 major consequences of social risk factors. And it's actually in the field now. We're trying to get the responses from experts about these 31 consequences. Yung precursors, we're still developing the list. We haven't finalized it yet. That's why question mark again, because we don't really have a number at the moment. So yung medyo stable dyan in terms of, and something with confidence in terms of research findings, is the one in the middle, the social risk factors. And that's the one I'm gonna discuss after this. All right, sige. So, okay, so participation ulit. Okay, so meron ako example dito of 4 social risk factors. Okay, so the first one is failure to appropriately recognize legal requirements related to indigenous or First Nations people's land and rights. So maybe kung sa Philippines to, this would include yung mga Indigenous People's Rights Act of I think it's 1997, hindi ako nagkakamali. And then another one is damage to built heritage. So built heritage would be yung mga, I guess, historical houses, historical towns. So siguro yung mga vegan natin and yung mga heritage churches natin, Baclayon Church in Bohol. Tapos disruption to local businesses and economy. So this could range, I guess, from tourism activities to small and medium scale enterprises. Okay, so for example, siguro if we talk about paete, for example, talk about wood carving. And then the other one is loss of amenity due to changes in the environmental characteristics of an area. So for example, imagine, doing a big development, for example, in Tagaytay, di ba? So there's this, I think the the a large part of the monetary or financial value of the area in Tagaytay is the view, di ba? So if you lose that, example, you lose some views if you have a high-rise building, dun mismo sa surrounding the area, then so there would be changes of the loss of amenity. So and also yung visual amenity, that's part of it. Okay. So now if we look at these four, let's have a short exercise and think about, if you think about a theme or a topic that would tie these four topics together, could you come up with a word that would be like, I guess, an appropriate theme or topic that is similar to all of these four social risk factors? Again, pakilagay na lang sa chat. Meron ba kayong maisip? What word do you think, if you're coming up with a category for these four? May ganong di ba? May ganong board game. Board game ba yun? Or a certain game that you think of categories. So what would be, an appropriate category for these four social risk factors? Could be one word, could be maybe a phrase. Okay, lack of accountability. All right, sige, meron pa ba? So this exercise is about coming up with a framework. So if you want to organize different social risk factors, how can we organize them into certain categories? So this is part of the framework development that we did. So ginawa namin, I showed you all of the different methods that we had a while ago. So the different findings we got from there, we had to distill all of those and come up with categories so that there is a way to organize them. Because otherwise, kasi kung listahan lang yan ng 35 social risks, that's really not going to be helpful to practitioners. So to make it, I guess, easier to apply, the first step is to categorize them, group them together, so that there will be a mental model that could be used by our practitioners. Okay, so there's lack of proper assessment and planning. Okay, I think tsaka itong lack of accountability. So they're both correct. Okay. However, I think you're thinking more in terms of I guess issues or maybe causes. Okay, mga drivers of this one. But maybe the question has to do with what is the category that you could think of that would bind all of these different factors together? Local community, all right? Meron pa ba? Okay. Actually, very close yung local community. Okay. So I can't remember now how many are these, but these social factors are actually, with this category, this is actually the biggest. If I'm not mistaken, out of the 35, siguro nasa mga maybe around 14 or 13. So almost, a big chunk of or no, actually, it might be even more, maybe 18, mga ganon. All right. So we call this, so the term we use for them and to group them together is, we call them place-related social risk factors. So anything that has to do with geography, yung location of the project, and also with the people living there. So all social risk factors related to that. So we categorize them under place-related social risk factors. Okay, so yung local community, okay, yeah, that's very close to it. Now the next category, okay, so we have conflicts of interest or corruption. We have undue political influence or fluctuating political interest. So for example, like some projects could be designated as green lane. So we could think that there's going to be speedy bureaucratic processes that would result in the approval of these projects or for them to go ahead. So yun yung political influence. So if the government designates them as significant projects or important projects. Lack of due process, including transparency and accountability issues. So this one has to do with where there's some bureaucratic process that were skipped, for example, okay, in delivering a project. That's the fourth one is project governance breakdown during delivery. So ibig sabihin, there were a lot of barriers in continuing the resumption of the delivery of the project para magpatuloy siya. So this would include yung relationship between levels of government. So for example, maybe you wouldn't get the municipality approval, or may approval man, but then there could be some hostility for some reason. There's a history of hostility between a particular construction company, for example, and a certain politician. So that might affect the smooth delivery of a project. Now, if we look at this four social risk factors, what is the common denominator that we could think of? Kung yung una kanina is place-related, ito kaya, what could be the common theme or denominator of this four social risk factors? Policy related, pwede. Okay. Social division, institutional, yes, kasi nandun yung mga government. Okay. So it's another P, papakita na natin. So, and related yung mga binabanggit dyan sa chat. Okay, so this one is proponent. So we're talking about those social risk factors associated with the profile of the project proponent. So pag profile, we're talking here of yung by nature. For example, for example, if we talk about mining companies, they have a certain legacy in certain communities. So that's part of the profile. And sometimes we're not only talking of the developer, for example, we're also talking of their contractors and subcontractors. So sometimes they also affect proponent-related social risk factors. And specifically, we're talking about company values for the company. And then we're also talking about how proponents, how they deal with yung changing political priorities of government and also their relationship with communities. So pretty much, I think for me, if I were to simplify proponent-related social risk factors, I would say they have a lot to do with company values, how the private sector, for example, how they navigate political priorities of government, or how they relate to different levels of governments, and then also how they relate with community affected, those communities affected by their activities. So there's a lot of, so it's I guess if I were to simplify it, it's both values and also I guess relational factors, specifically I guess the proponent with its contractors, and also the proponent and contractors with different levels of governments or departments, pwedeng bureaucracy and politicians, and also the way they and their history with different communities and their relationships with different communities. So yun yung mga pumapasok. So I don't know if I would go back to it. Okay, so yung mga lack of due process, if you could see how they actually belong to proponent-related social risk factors. And then finally, dito na tayo sa last. So we have environmental harm because of construction. We have disruptions and nuisances that affect public health. We also have geotechnical hazards emanating or materializing during the project construction, for example, with impacts on the living conditions of surrounding communities or the public. And then we also have a loss of accessibility and or increase in travel time as a result of a project. So for example, yung meron bang yung mga daan, no, na for example before it was the residents using it, but now you also have the construction workers, you also have the tractors from the developers using the road, competing with residents and increasing the traffic, for example, from such activities. So ayan, so ito naman, if you think of these four, kung yung una was place, the second one was proponent, ano kaya yung posibleng category for our last one? Meron ba mga hula dyan? Okay, clue natin, it's another P. Pwede. Para i-cover na natin lahat. Okay, sige. So the last one, okay, is actually project-related. Project-related social risk factors. So these are risk factors associated with the scale and impact of a project on the environment and communities. Okay, and also the infrastructure planning and the design approach adopted. So yung project, for me, part of it is the nature of the activity itself or of the development itself. Like for example, I guess the impact would be different if you're building or if you're putting up for example wind farms in a certain mountainous region, or if you're actually developing an open pit mining in the same area, diba? By the nature of the project itself, magkaiba na yung scale and impact of the project on the environment and communities. So these are dependent on the nature of the project itself. That's how I would understand project-related social risk factors. Yeah, and with that, so we have this basic framework for identifying social risks. So we have these three categories: place, proponent, and project. So we call it 3Ps for now. Now, why is this important? So it's not just important as an intellectual exercise. Oh, by the way, I guess my main caveat to this one, or qualification with the 3Ps framework, is it's not supposed to be used as like an intellectual exercise where everything is neat and with clear boundaries of a social risk factor only belonging to place, proponent, or project. So I don't think of it that way. For me, the value of using the 3Ps framework is if say a social or a risk assessor, for example, is able to identify, kasi a certain social risk factor arguably could fall under any of these three categories. But I think it's important to make a decision on which category would it mostly belong, because I think the management and the mitigation would be different if it's coming from place, if it's coming from proponent, or if it's coming from project. So what do I mean by that? So for example, if it's coming from place, then it means a lot of it has to do, a lot of the response or the management and mitigation has a lot to do with community engagement, for example. Whereas if the driver or the cause of the social risk is more related to proponent, then I think the response should be a bit more internal to the company. They might have to have a serious discussion or rethinking of their values as a company. And then the other thing naman, if it's project, as I said, sometimes if it's project related, it's by its very nature, ganun na siya. So I guess sometimes the difficult decision would have to do with what kind of risks are you just really willing to do, or are you willing to absorb as a community? Kasi ito yung nature ng project na ginagawa natin. And what is the capacity to absorb, for example, the risks for this particular project? Kasi andyan na yan eh. It's by the nature of itself. So I think those are the decisions that are important for managing different kinds of risk. So if you could make a decision on where you think it resides mostly, hindi ko naman sinasabing isa lang yung category. But if you could make that decision, and I think that has implications with the strategy for managing the social risk, and also the kind of resources, and I guess how much resources you're supposed to devote in order to kasi iba-iba rin yung consequences. So there's also that question of resource mobilization. So where would you actually allocate your resources to address a particular social risk? So this would be one of the, I guess, the main consideration, I think, when you're trying to identify social risks. So it has implications for application of tools, and also for managing the social risks. And with that, I end the presentation, and if there are any questions, we'll have the open forum, I believe. So sorry, I took up a lot of the time. So we have maybe 20 minutes for the open forum, or if you have questions or comments, realizations. I'm also curious I guess, to hear what you think of the research project. For me, it's more a curiosity because like I presented this already in 2 conferences, and we always present findings to our industry working group. Yeah, but beyond that, wala masyado. So I'm actually curious to get your reaction. Kahit hindi na question, kahit reaction na lang. What do you think of the research process, and also of this framework, the framework that we've developed so far based on the research findings? Yeah, I'm just curious to know what you think about it.
Thank you, Dr. Emmer. So we'll open the floor for questions, but before we indulge our groups and our students and guests here at the Zoom right now, so we have 40 online, and the rest are face-to-face there at the SDS lab. So Emmer, I'm just curious about, you mentioned you've engaged different stakeholders. So definitely there are different values and perspectives about, as you mentioned, about risk. How do you handle the divergences, and sometimes, kind of, kasi minsan bordering na nag-aaway na yung dalawang dalawang sector. So how do you handle, or kind of come up with a consensus that, okay, these are the risks? Or do you just, recognize na, okay, we will not really come into a consensus, then we just list it down as one of the different risks? Thank you, Emmer.
Sige, siguro while we're waiting for questions or comments from the others, siguro I'll respond to that one. Yeah, that's a typical those kinds of conflicts are quite typical for different kinds of development projects. But for this particular research, kasi wala kaming case study. I don't know if you notice, I didn't discuss a case study. But there's a reason for that. So so for a different research project, yung industry engagement standards, they were trying to get so a lot of our project partners, they all say that the research is important, they want to contribute, they think it's important. But when you actually want to get data, they're quite hesitant kasi, you have a research project because there's a problem that you want to address. And then you want to come up with a tool to address that problem. So necessarily, yung problem would mean, there's something wrong in their practices or there's limitations in their practices. So normally, most private companies don't want to be perceived as, na nagkukulang sila. So we had difficulty getting. So ang nangyari is to get insights from industry and even government, we have to use scenarios. So yun yung isang method na ginawa for the industry engagement. So one of our research fellows, Dr. Ruth O'Connor, so hindi siya part ng social risk project program. So what she did is she got a couple of high-profile major infrastructure projects in Australia with high media profile in terms of the conflicts. Tapos pinagsama-sama niya yung mga issues na yun in those different projects to come up with a scenario of a supposedly fictitious project. Pero actually, based naman siya sa actual. Pero not a particular one. So, pinaghalo-halo na. And then, when you present that to different respondents, dun mo makukuha yung insights nila on what they think went wrong, how could they have avoided it, what kind of tools would be helpful to address those issues. So yun. So yung in terms of conflict, we really don't have that for this particular project kasi we don't talk about a particular case study. So while meron, pero wala. Yung in terms of consensus, yung so far, the Delphi technique for the master list, of social risk factors, for example. So we have 35. So the Delphi technique, wala siyang definite threshold for consensus. So the Delphi technique, by the way, I forgot to mention is it's actually consensus building among the experts. So you want to make sure that they're all on the same page about the survey or the responses. So what we did with round one was it was just a binary question, yes, no lang. So we had I can't remember now the exact number. I think we had 27 social risk factors based on the risk registers and also based on our literature review. So we came up with 27 social risk factors based on that. And then ginamit namin yung Delphi technique to get our multisectoral experts from community industry for them to say or to confirm whether or not, so by saying yes or no, kung social risk factors ba to. So ang threshold namin is 70%. So when we looked at the application of the Delphi technique, the lowest is, I think, 51% threshold. Tapos I think the highest is usually 80%. So based on that, we settled for 70 so that we have a high level of confidence. So dun sa 70 na yun, so nakakuha kami ng 70% plus na yes response from our experts on, if I'm not mistaken, on 30, I think tama to. 32 social risk factors. They got 70% plus. Okay, some of it matas nga, 85, 90% of the experts saying yes, that these are they should be included dun sa master list of social risk factors. May tatlo kami na yung mga net zero, mga ganon, hindi sila hindi sila na kasama dun sa 70%. Pero mataas pa rin. They were 55% to 68%, mga ganun. Pero sinama na namin for testing just in case. So they make up the 35. So yun. So it's a bit So in terms of consensus dun sa Delphi, dahil hindi naman sila nagkaharap-harap, yun yung kagandahan ng Delphi technique. They respond to it by themselves. So yung findings, doon na namin kinakalibrate, yung findings, kung may consensus ba or wala. Yeah, so for this particular project, um, yeah, so unfortunately, while tama yung sinasabi mo, Dino, na the common and conflicts sa mga ganitong projects, pero dahil hindi kami na case study, yeah, it's not in front of us yung conflict so far. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Emmer.
Yeah.
So we'll open the floor for questions. Before
Mhm.
that, I'd like to recognize John Byrne Barrel of First Gen, also an alumni here from the BS Human Ecology, Social Technology. Hi, John Byrne. Baka you have questions, John Byrne? Okay, anyone? You could raise your hand.
Yun pala, I have a question, Dean. Are they also taking yung parang, yung research proposal course ngayon as third year?
Yes, they do have UME 195, tama ba? That's
Okay.
where they do the social in preparation for their thesis. So
Okay.
yes, human eco and nutrition, we have the thesis on their third year and fourth year. Yeah.
Ayun, yeah. Yeah, when I was putting the slides on the research process, I had that at the back of my mind na baka, there are some insights helpful for that course, pero I don't
Yeah.
know if that was achieved. Pero
And then I think some are really interested into identifying social risks and social impact assessments on their thesis or in their thesis. So that's why they really joined the webinar as well. Emmer, there's a question here. So Alanis, would you like me to read this or would you like to read it? Alanis Isobel. So I'll read it na lang po. Would like to clarify with Sir Emmer na the social risk factors are interrelated and identification of one may cause another. For example po, a proponent-based risk factor like lack of due process may result in a project-based risk. Kumbaga, nag-feedback ba tong mga factors na to in each category, the different P's? Thank you, Emmer.
Di ko yan naisip. Potentially, it's possible. For example, what I'm thinking of, pero baka mas ano pa, ang mas, whenever we have our own parang team discussion about the findings, yung mas nakikita pa namin sometimes is more than yung categories, sometimes yung consequences, doon kami, doon namin nakikita yung yung problem sometimes. Pero doon sa question ni, what's the name again? Was it Giselle? Tama ba?
Alanis Isobel.
Alanis Isabel. Nag-feed in. So my instinct is to say yes, pero at the same time, I'm thinking of an example to illustrate it. Wala akong, iniisip ko yung, yeah, so for example, yung lack of recognition of yung requirements for land, yung land ownership of indigenous peoples, for example. So on the one hand, you could say that if the values of the company is profit oriented, so therefore they wouldn't look at it, they would miss those, maybe that sensitivity to customary land titles, for example. So pwede mong tignan na that resulted in a place-based social risk factor, that there was an omission, hindi ginawa yung requirement for considering the customary ownership of an indigenous group in the area. Siguro I'll make it more concrete, no? Halimbawa siguro, say, a company, like Ayala, no, meron silang wind farm na pinropose. Tapos this would be in a one of the highlands, siguro kung sa Pampanga to, normally, you'll find Aita communities there. Yeah, so kung siguro hindi, wag ko na sabihing Ayala. Any private company. So if it's profit driven, yun yung values niya. So you would understand that the omission could be, from that point of view, could be a proponent-related social risk factors. Kasi ganun yung proponent behavior. Pero at the same time, and maybe to make a decision that it's more proponent, you might look at their other projects in non-indigenous areas. Ganun pa rin ba? Profit-driven pa rin ba yung values? Diba? Pero yun nga, pag nag-intersect siya with an ancestral domain, for example, nagkakaroon siya ng intersection with a place-based or place-related social risk factor. Pero I would say, kung from a comparative perspective, kung meron silang ibang projects na malakas pa rin yung profit-driven values, regardless if it has an ancestral heritage or wala, then I would say na it's primarily a proponent based problem. Doon siya nanggagaling. Pero yun nga, pag nagkataon na may intersection siya ng ancestral domain, then nag-i-intersect siya with a place-based social risk factor. Ayun, nakaisip na ako ng example. I hope that's helpful. Eliza, tama? Eliza.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah,
Emmer.
no
Because I
worries.
think your project really concentrated on identifying the risks that results to impact. So rather than yung intersection pa. So I think that could be phase 2 of your project as well. Sige po. Emmer, ito yung tanong ni Alisa. Do SIAs get easily outdated? This is knowing that indicators are made relative or specific to the people consulted at one point in time. So, ano ba siya? Kung relative or it could easily get outdated. Thank you.
Oo. Are you... sino nagtanong nun ulit? Sorry.
Maria Aliza.
Si Alay. Same person? Hindi ba no? Giselle. Sino yung kanina? Sorry.
Siya rin. Oo, yeah.
Siya rin.
Ay, hindi, iba. Sorry.
Ay, sorry. Okay.
Silang Alisa.
Alisa din. Alisa, siguro clarify ko lang. Are you referring to an impact statement? Yun ba yung question? Na yung kung ano yung results na nasa impact statement na mabilis siyang ma-outdate. Tama ba ako? Para lang mas...
I think yung, for example, sa isang social impact assessment report,
yes.
So baka daw kasi mag-outdate siya kasi iba na yung kinonsult mo last time as opposed to, halimbawa ngayon, after 5 years, iba na naman ang community mo doon sa parang.
Yeah, good point actually, no? Yung temporal aspect of it. Well, I guess yung unang, I think the first issue is yung to begin with, actually problem to anywhere, no? Yung baseline data, no? To begin with, no? So yun yung una, no? Na parang meron ka bang baseline data to begin with. Tapos yeah, yung outdated, yes, that's an important point, no? That's actually, that's very good, no? Hindi ko yan naisip. Normally in our project, when we talk about the temporal aspect of social risk management, we talked about it in terms of yung different phases of the project delivery. So yung pre-planning, approval, project, so exploration siguro kung sa mining, then development. So we think of it in that regard, no? Pero well, I guess the easy answer to that is, in terms of social risk, maybe iba siya sa social impact. Sa social risk kasi, hindi siya dapat natatapos sa pre-planning. So the social risk process is actually ongoing. And dun sa analysis namin ng risk registers, nandun yun actually. Yung at every different part of the project delivery, that there is a check-in about the different risks. Kasi iba din kasi yung management and mitigation process on the particular period. So I don't know, pero yung 5 years, for example, na sinasabi mo, yung hindi pa siya nagsimula. I think yun yung sinasabi mo, no? Oo nga, no? No, that's really problematic. If it takes 5 years from making the initial assessment up to implementation. I guess yung response ko lang doon is, um, I guess there should be a temporal consideration for, hindi naman, I don't think you need to redo it, pero I think there's an importance of updating it or to check kung relevant pa ba yung mga strategies for managing after 5 years. I don't know how it is done dito, pero yung at least yung risk management in Australia, yung nakita ko sa it's part of the process kasi. So it's not as if nag-risk assess sa simula tapos implementation na lang yun. No, no. They actually do it. Ang hindi ko lang alam is if the pre-planning takes 5 years, every year ba? I'm not sure about that. But maybe that would be the ideal. Na it's not supposed to be a one-shot activity. Yeah. And so I guess my the summary of my response is that's a good point. But I think it needs to be updated, I think. At on a more regular, hindi naman every 5 years siguro. Diba? At siguro maganda yung every year, no, na-update siya. Which also goes back to the point of kung na ongoing yung engagement, especially with communities, na hindi siya natatapos from that first contact. Yes.
Thank you very much, Doc Emmer. So, if there are no pressing questions now, because I know some of you have still classes 5:30 to 7 and
Yeah.
already, I think, 2 hours ahead, right, Doc Emmer?
Yeah.
3 hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
3 hours, yeah.
3 hours
Okay
ahead.
lang. Kumain na ako bago ng
Yeah.
kumain na ako.
Kind of late. But yeah, if we do have questions, because we still have classes naman. So, and Dr. Emmer will be here in the Philippines again this November. So we could
Yeah.
begin
Siguro yung hindi pa natin napag-usapan din, Jen, maybe the other, if the research process is something that interests you and if there's something I could contribute, baka pwedeng magkaroon ng parang methods clinic or methods workshop dun sa mga thesis topics nila when I'm there. Di pa natin masyadong alam.
Yeah.
Towards
So-
the end of the year or early part of the year, yeah, if there are some of them interested in I guess a more informal workshop
Yeah.
on methods siguro kung gusto nila. Pero qualitative mostly. Sorry, hindi, wala akong masyadong alam sa quant.
Yeah,
So,
I think
di ko-
most of us are into quali.
Quali naman. Okay, sige. Yun lang siguro, lang, patalastas. If there's interest, they could tell you siguro, so we could organize something.
Yeah. Sige.
Yes. Okay, thank
So
you.
that's
Thanks
one
so
commitment
much.
of Doc Emmer as well. But before that, Doc Emmer, of course, we have an evaluation link here. So please do click on that link for those who are participating. It will issue your certificate for participation. And then, of course, sir, we'd like to thank, of course, Dr. Emer Sanchez. Palakpakan po natin siya. And with that, pakita po
Pleasure
natin
is
yung ating
mine.
certificate, Kuya Jasper, a certificate of recognition. Yan.
Thank you.
Awarded to. Ayan. Pagdating mo na lang dito, Emmer, plus your token.
Oh.
Dr. Emerson Sanchez. Sige,
Thank
let's
you.
have a photo as well with Dr. Emmer.
Okay, pakita naman yung mga cameras.
Sige,
On
open
yun naman
po
yung cameras.
Yan. With the certificate first. And then, ayan. And then without the certificate po siguro, with all, please open your cameras po para we'll have Ayan.
Yung mga handa.
Yung mga handa.
Ayaw naman
Tapos,
natin on the spot.
yeah, sige po. And then, of course, for those who are interested, we'll upload this video with the permission of Dr. Emmer to
Yeah,
our
sure.
official Facebook. So, a lot of our faculty members also and researchers are interested. Sige po. So, we'll take a photo. And we'd like to thank, of course, Kuya Jasper for facilitating the online platform as well. Ayan, okay? Smile po tayo. 1, 2. We have two slides. Tama po ba? All right, 1, 2, 3. And then, next one, please. Sige po, 1, 2, 3. All right. So with that, maraming salamat po. And please do follow the DSDS Che Facebook page. We'll have another talk, SDE Talks. Our next speaker will be the DILG director here in Laguna as well. So sa government perspective naman in terms of their use of social impact assessment. So Dr. Emmer, we hope to see you soon here in the Philippines. And thank you very much everyone for joining our SDE Talks this afternoon. And good evening po sa ating lahat. Happy dinner and good night, Emmer. Thank you very much. See you soon. Maraming salamat. Thank you, Emmer. Talk soon.